Hi, my wonderful students. Today we're going to be talking about a brand new form of a quadratic equation. Holy hot dog, right? I know. Okay, so far we've talked about standard form, which is this lovely form, the ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, vertex form is a very helpful form of the quadratic equation because it tells us where the vertex of a parabola is. So, if we have a parabola here, the shape of a quadratic graph makes this U-shaped looking graph, which is called a parabola. Okay, and the part either at the bottom of the parabola or the top is called the vertex point. So this point and this point is the vertex point of the parabola. So when your quadratic equation's in vertex form, it's really easy to spot the vertex point, which is helpful when you're graphing. So usually vertex form is used when you have to graph a parabola or a quadratic, same idea. Okay, and the vertex point, so this is our equation. It has an A, an H, and a K in it. The vertex point is the H and the K in this lovely formula, which the H value you must think the opposite or you have to flip the sign. Okay, so you have to flip the sign of the H value, and I'll kind of explain why in a little bit. So you flip the sign and that will give you the H. Now, the reason why you have to flip the sign is because this is the standard form of vertex form. So this is what your standard vertex form looks like, which I know that's confusing because it's the standard form, but this is what your typical vertex form looks like. This is the formula. Okay, so it's x minus the h value. So if you put in a positive h value, like let's say you put in positive 2, it'd be x minus a positive 2, which is just x minus 2. Now, let's see what happens if you were to put in a negative value for h. So if I substituted in a negative value for the h, so if I substituted in negative 5 for the h, if that was my h value, okay, it'd be x minus negative 5. It'd be a double negative. And what happens when you have a double negative? It will transform into a positive. So if you have x minus a number, the h value is secretly a positive h. If you have x plus an h value, okay, technically the h is a negative because when you have a double negative, it will turn positive. So you have to flip the sign on the h value. Now k is whatever it is. If it's a positive, then k is positive. If it's a negative, then k is negative. So that's kind of why you have to flip the sign on the h value. Okay, so when we're talking about the vertex, sometimes a parabola will have a vertex that's the maximum, and sometimes a parabola will have a vertex that is a minimum. So a maximum on a parabola is the highest point, the absolute highest point on that entire graph. So the graph will not go any higher than a maximum point. So this right here is a maximum. It's kind of like if you're on a roller coaster, the top of the roller coaster before you fall to your death. That is the maximum point. Okay, now if a graph has a lowest point, so if the parabola does not go any lower than a certain point, this point is called a minimum. So a maximum is kind of like when the parabola faces down. The minimum is when the graph faces up. So the minimum is kind of like when you go down the roller coaster and you reach your death at the bottom. Okay, so maximum versus minimum. Be careful. Minimum is the absolute lowest point on your graph. The maximum is the absolute highest point on your graph. Okay, now you did an activity where you found out that the a value in your vertex form, which happens to be the same a value that is in standard form. Okay, so if you know the a value in standard form, then you know the a value in vertex form and vice versa. But anyways, if your a value is greater than 0, so all numbers greater than 0 are positive. Okay, so if you have a positive a value, guess what? Your parabola faces up and kind of makes a happy face because it's positive, right? Positive people are happy, right? So if you have a is greater than 0, you will have a minimum because a minimum graph looks like the graph is facing upward, and if you were to put 2 dots here, it'd be like a happy face. Okay, so if a is positive, think about a happy face, and your parabola will face up if it has a minimum. Okay, so just be careful. Okay, when a is negative, so when your a value is a negative number, your graph is sad. Okay, negative people tend to be sad or unhappy, right? So when A is less than 0, these are all negative numbers. The graph will face downwards and make a sad face, and the graph will have a maximum. So just be careful. It's kind of confusing. So when A is positive, the parabola has a minimum. When A is negative, the parabola has a maximum. So just be careful. For me personally, the happy and sad face thing really helps, because when I try to think about it too close or too hard, I guess, I kind of mix it up. So just be careful. Okay, so in example 1 and 2, all we're going to do is we're going to practice using a quadratic in vertex form. And what we're going to do, we're going to identify the vertex points, so the h and k in the formula. We're going to identify the a value, which will tell us if the parabola faces upward or downward. And that will tell us if it has a maximum or minimum. Okay, well, I know you guys are already pumped up for example 1. So let's get started on example 1. And let's hope that my document camera isn't frozen. Yes, it's not frozen. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. My cat just jumped up and fell down. Sorry, Babette. All right, but anyways, so let's get started. Sorry, I'm distracted because my cat fell off the chair. Poor thing. Okay, she's okay now. Okay, she's a happy cat. See, she's a happy cat. Happy Babette. Okay, sorry about that. You know I get distracted by cats. But anyways, let's get started. So vertex form. Okay, this is our lovely vertex form. Okay, remember A determines if the parabola faces up or down, and the h and the k are the vertex points. So h and k are your vertex. Don't forget h, we think the opposite, and we have to flip the sign. Okay, when a is less than 0 or negative, the graph makes a sad face. It faces down, which means it has a maximum. When a is greater than 0, it's a happy graph because it's positive and faces up, which means it has a minimum. So using this information, we'll be able to identify the vertex point, the a value, and we'll be able to state whether the parabola has a maximum or minimum. And using that, we can draw just a really brief sketch, a really rough sketch. It's not going to be like very accurate, but we can kind of know what the graph's going to look like a little bit based off this information. Okay, well, let's get started. So, on this equation right here, I want to know the vertex point, which is the h and the k in the formula. The h is whatever is added or subtracted to the x, and don't forget we got to flip the sign or you think the opposite. The k is whatever is added or subtracted onto the end. So let's see here, our vertex point is the h and the k. So the h, we got to flip that sign, so when h is a +4, when it looks positive, it's actually negative. So the h value in my vertex point is -4. And then the k value is whatever's on the end, which is this -3. So my vertex point is -4, -3. So guess what, you guys, on my graph, I can already kind of plot where my vertex point is going to land. So it's going to land at -4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. -3, 1, 2, 3. So that is where my vertex point will be. I just need to figure out if it's going to be a maximum or a minimum now. Okay, so the a value is the value right after the equal sign, is the value that's right in front. Which if you ever don't see a number in front of that parenthesis, that means that your a value is secretly a 1. So just be careful. There are these sneaky little ninjas that'll pop out at no time and scare you and also confuse you. So just watch it. Okay, so my a value, the number right after the equal sign, and in front of my parenthesis is -3. Okay, so my a value is negative, so my a value is less than 0. Okay, so when it's less than 0, it's sad, so it faces down, and sad graphs have maximum, so it will face down because it's sad, because it's negative. Okay, so that means that since a is less than 0, it will have a maximum. Okay, so on my graph, I have my vertex point. This is my vertex. Okay, and I know that my graph is facing down, so I know It's going to look something like this, which mine looks really bad. Sorry, that was kind of bad. But anyways, again, it's not a very accurate graph, but I at least know kind of where the vertex is and if it faces up or down. So there you go, you guys. Not too shabby, right? Let's do example 2.